All right, good evening, everybody. I would like to call this Monday, September 25th, 2023 meeting of the Lake Havasu City Parks and Recreation Advisory Board to order. If everybody would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Alrighty, we will move on to item number 3, the roll call.
Sherry Butler.
Here.
Kyler Cox.
Here.
Mercedes Kaiser.
Here.
Jason Mitchell.
Here.
Shannon Murray.
Here.
Ashley Pasquale.
Here.
Alex Ross.
Here.
Philip Shannon.
Here.
And Council Member Vice Mayor David Ling.
Here.
Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you. Move on to item number 4, the call to the public. We'll now have an open call to the public for citizens wishing to address the board on issues within the jurisdiction of the board. Your comments must be limited to 3 minutes or less. If you wish to address an item already on today's agenda, you should wait until that item is announced for a public hearing. At the conclusion of the open call to the public, individual members of the board may respond to criticism made by those who address the board, may ask staff to review a matter, or may ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. However, board members cannot discuss or take legal action on matters not already on the agenda. That being said, would anybody like to address the board during the call to the public? Okay, seeing none. We will move on to item 5.1, approval of the August 28th, 2023 meeting minutes. Looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from August 28th, 2023.
All right, we have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Alrighty. We'll move on to item number 6.1, the staff report. Director Keene.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Concerts in the Park will be held at London Bridge Beach from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. every Friday night in the month of October. There is still time to secure your booth for the Fall Fun Fair. Reservations deadline is Friday, October 13th. Fall Fun Fair will be held on October 28th at the Rotary Park Ball Fields from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. Tickets are 25 cents each and cash only is accepted. The after-school wait lists have been cleared weekly, and we're trying to do that every week. We've been fairly successful so far, so that's moving along well. The Youth Talent Show will be held under the bridge on October 26th as part of the London Bridge Days. This event is free and registration begins September 25th. The Recreation Division is preparing for holiday events and the winter break camp. We'll be offering a paddle sports safety class and certification with a Bill Williams excursion in cooperation with Arizona Game and Fish Department on October 5th and 6th, and then again on October 10th and 12th. Lake Havasu High School has a couple of home swim meets coming up on October 6th and the 24th. Our second session of midday swim lessons will begin October 9th and run through October 19th. Fall break open swim schedule. The week of October 9th will be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. The after-school program will be swimming on October 19th. And staff will be attending an aquatic symposium in Phoenix on October 26th. We'll be offering a water safety class on October 27th through the 29th. And staff is starting to work on the 2024 Kinder Swim schedule with the principals and teachers at the local schools. A couple of events in the community center. The Havasu Stitchers Sew Staycation will be held October 2nd and 4th. Western Welcome Bunko, October 16th. The Dementia Care Conference, October 17th. The Veteran Stand Down Resource Fair, October 21st. The Blood Drive will be held October 23rd through the 26th. An Arizona Collectibles and Firearms Show, October 28th and 29th. And the Eastern Star Bunko will be held on October 30th. As we're starting to get into our event season, events out in the parks, concerts in the park, again, will be held at London Bridge Beach every Friday night in October. The IJSBA, or Jet Ski World Finals, the freestyle show, will be held October 1st in the Bridgewater Channel. The 25th Annual Breast Cancer Awareness Walk will be held October 7th at London Bridge Beach. The 10th Annual Save a Life Domestic Violence Awareness Walk will be held October 14th at Rotary Park. A Taste of Havasu, October 18th, out at the Sarah Park Rodeo Grounds. The 45th Annual Relics and Rods Run to the Sun Cruise Night will be held on McCulloch Boulevard, October 19th. The Witches Paddle will be held October 21st at Rotary Park and through the Bridgewater Channel. The Relics and Rods Parade down Main Street will be held October 22nd on McCulloch Boulevard. The Youth Talent Show will be held October 26th under the London Bridge. Walk Away from Drugs event October 26th at Rotary Park. The 52nd Annual London Bridge Days Parade will be held on McCulloch Boulevard October 28th. The Fall Fun Fair will follow the parade at Rotary Park on October 28th. And Halloween Fright Night will be held October 31st on McCulloch Boulevard. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Director Keene. Any questions or comments for the director?
I have a quick question. Is the walk away from drugs an actual walk, or is it just like in a kind of a community event?
It's a community event, but they do go on a short walk as well.
Any other questions or comments? I'll just make a couple comments. Obviously, we're getting into one of the best seasons in Lake Havasu, the event season. So, your staff is doing an amazing job, and they've got their work cut out for them here coming up in the next couple months. So, please pass on the fact that we appreciate them, and this is part of the reason we all live in Lake Havasu is this amazing weather we've seen in the last week. So, again, tell them to keep it up, and we love them for doing it. And then also, just want to give a shout out to your staff as well. We had a handful of recent storms that really kind of wreaked havoc on some of the beaches, on the parks, and the swim areas and stuff like that. And your staff is out in full force keeping them clean. I think within the next day they were back to usable condition. And again, I don't know if anybody saw the beaches the way they looked after a couple of those storms, but it was like the Loch Ness Monster had landed. I mean, you couldn't even walk up to the shore without having to traverse through a bunch of seaweed. So great job to them. They were out there kicking butt, and again, we love it. So thank you. Any other questions or comments for the director? Okay, we will move on to our public hearings. Item 7.1, discussion update of the downtown Catalyst site. Director Keene.
Perfect. So quick update here. We did receive final design documents earlier today. So everything is set there for that design. The bid documents are being prepared as we speak. Kind of the schedule looking forward is to have the bids out on the street by mid to late October, with them due back by early December, and a council award either in late December or early January based on when council meetings are. So that really kind of concludes and wraps up my report there. Very exciting to get to this step where we're actually able to send this out to bid and get those numbers back and see what they look like.
Awesome. Great. Any comments or questions from the board before we open it to the public?
I'll ask a question. So what is the next? So is the next step that this now goes before city council, or what's kind of our next step here?
So the next step is as the bid documents get prepared, then they'll be kind of call it putting it out on the street, but basically allows the opportunity for any general contractors to bid on the project. And so that's open for 5 to 6 weeks. And then we'll do a formal bid opening and we'll review those bids and make a recommendation to council either at the last meeting in December or the first meeting in January.
Any questions or comments for the director?
One question, Director. After the council, if they accept the bids, what's the projected timeline for completion of this kind of project?
We don't have and this will be what we negotiate with the developer or the general contractor. So we don't have a schedule yet on length of time that it would take to construct this. But we are looking at the construction starting after Desert Storm. That kind of wraps up the event season here in Havasu. And that should give us plenty of time to be able to have that work completed before the fall of 2024. Yes, it's next fall, before the next event season.
So I guess just want to clarify a couple things. So we had heard a general total build-out number. What was that estimated to be at?
Approximately 2.8 million. Again, we have $1 million grant from Arizona State Parks and Trails, and approximately a little over 800,000 left in the Americans Best Communities Competition Prize. So there, from what the estimates were, again, those weren't bids, so just kind of the estimates, we would be looking at about 800,000 or so that would be requested out of the general fund. And that's what council would make their decisions on. Now, again, we don't know if those bids are going to come in higher than the estimates, or there's a chance they could come in lower just based off the price of, when they did those estimates we were still working through some backlogs, and pricing on things were a little bit higher. So we have seen decreases in some of the projects from estimates. So there's always that possibility as well.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of exactly what I was alluding to. So essentially, we have a $2.8 million project that will essentially, if we go through with it, will cost the city $800,000 or so. The rest covered by grants and or winnings from the America's Best Communities contest. But essentially, that the next step would be putting it out to that bid. We'll get a real price of what it's going to cost us, which, like you said, could be more or less. Hopefully, less. We'll take less. And then that'll go back to the council. The council then will decide if they want to, if it's higher than what the funding we have already, then we'll have to get a decision from them if they want to proceed, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. So I guess I just wanted to sum that up for the public, because again, a lot of people are already thinking this is an approved project, which isn't the case. No. Once we get those prices, again, higher, lower, wherever that is, it'll go to the council. The council will decide how much actual city funding we want to put towards that project to make it happen or not.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, cool. Any other questions or comments? Ashley? Oh yeah, look, you raised your hand on the screen. Fancy. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess my question is to Director Keene, and all the board. I'm wondering if this is a good time to start the conversation that Vice Mayor suggested about this board coming up with a process for engaging the community and naming the park. And maybe at our next meeting, we can have that as a discussion.
Sure. Thank you for the comment. Again, Director, Vice Mayor, if you want to tap into that.
Yeah, I definitely think we can start that discussion and kind of come up with some ways what that might look like on how we would do the naming of that facility. Certainly.
Thank you, Ashley. Are any other questions? All right, this is a public hearing. So I would open to the public if you'd like to address the board in reference to this topic. All right, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the board for any final comments or concerns, questions. Okay, move on to item 7.1, discussion sports fields and courts' current and future needs. Director Keene.
Thank you. So just kind of an update of a few things that we've been doing out in the parks or in the fields. The overseeding at Cypress is currently going on. The field is looking pretty good. There's still some areas, especially where the goalies would stand, that are struggling a little bit to recover. So those will be filling in. The overseeding is scheduled to be completed and the field reopened on October 21st. We had some staff go out to Dick Sant Park ball fields with the the addition of Guy Reynolds as our park superintendent. He has some of the experience in these realms. And at one of the fields, he was able to level and add new infield mix and really make that field much in the same way of the bid that we received to do each and every one of the fields at an extreme decrease in cost to the city of what it would have been had we gone through a company. So we're evaluating how we might be able to schedule those into the parks maintenance schedule and be able to maybe not do all of them internally, but if we can do a few of them or the majority of them, and then that would free up some of those dollars that we were looking at the possibility of having the companies come in and do. And I think the field turned out looking very nice. So a great job to those guys. The Island football field bleachers are completed and were installed before the first game. The new goalposts will be installed right after the season. I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, but I'm not positive. We just didn't want to start the installation and run into any issues or problems and then they not be able to utilize them for their season. So we will get those installed right after the season ends. We did do some aeration in the outfields at Sarah Park. Did meet also with the Disc Golf Club about the possibility of some future improvements to the disc golf courses, both at Sarah Park and Grand Island Park. So those are kind of some of the activities that we've been doing as a department to try to address the concerns that were brought forward on the fields. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for the director?
I have a question. Do the teams that use the fields, do they pay like a fee to use the fields, or is there any money, I guess, from each individual kind of sport? That I know the Chiefs did a lot of work themselves, but is there any other teams that are kind of taking it upon themselves to fundraise? Or
Yes. So there's definitely always fundraising going on by each of the clubs, and then the city does charge a fee per child if it's a youth, or like senior softball, adult softball also pays a fee to utilize our fields.
Ashley, if you have a question, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Director Keen, do you have any kind of update that you can share with us about the grants that were being looked into to support the fields?
I can say that there is a grant that we did apply for. It's a WIFA grant that is approximately $3 million for artificial turf. And that will be heard by a recommendation committee, I believe either this week or next, and then forwarded on to WIFA if we were to receive the recommendation of that grant. And the fields we would be looking at for that piece would be the upper field at Cypress, and then the possibility of the football field on the island. Again, we have to look at a different disposal method for that effluent water first. It doesn't make a ton of sense to go ahead and put artificial turf down and then still have to flood the field and submerge that turf for 3 months out of the year.
That answer your question, Ashley?
Yes, so only that one at this time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, this is a public hearing. Would anybody like to address the board on this topic? Go ahead.
Okay, hi. My name is David Moore. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to address the board. I've been in Lake Havasu for more than 25 years. I've been involved in youth and adult sports for 50 years plus. I've been involved in youth, adult sports. I first want to compliment the maintenance crews for taking care of the city fields. They do a great job. We've always been able to get something taken care of if needed. We had a regional all-star tournament here last June, received many compliments from the teams from out of town on what a great job and great look the fields were in. I am involved with Havasu Senior Softball, the batting cages, and also Little League. I've been involved in Havasu softball, baseball, soccer, football, basketball since I've been here. I've coached, umpired, refereed all levels from 4 and 5-year-olds to high school and adults. I was on the Coachella Valley Parks and Recreation Board for several years. I believe the Parks and Recreation Board is very important because they have the finger on the pulse of the community. However, they must be taken seriously. There has always been and will be a need for more facilities, but we have to use the facilities we have wisely. Budget cutbacks are a possibility in the future. Let's work smarter, not throw more money at the problem. Right now, practice facilities are our biggest problem. Parks and Recreation maintains restrooms at Oro Grande, Nautilus, Havasupai, Starline, and ASU. I believe these facilities were built for public use for practice sessions. We need better access to these facilities. I would like to see a better interaction with the schools to be able to upgrade their facilities and allow us better access. I don't know if we have a liaison with the school district. Maybe that's something we could look into so we could communicate better with each other. ASU has a great field and the potential to have 2 or 4 fields, and it has lighting. Lighting is a big issue. Oro Grande has a field that needs some tender loving care, also has a potential for 2 good fields. Island Ball Field, which I feel has been underutilized because it's used for other things like flooding. Also needs some work, but it would make a great field, and it has lights. At the schools, we would like to see the ball fields isolated from the playgrounds so that the schools don't need to worry about after school people getting on the school grounds. We can put up gates, put up locks that, as like with Little League, we could put combination locks, and that way they could get open and closed. Presently, the maintenance on those ball fields is non-existent. They might mow the grass every once in a while, but that's it. That being said, I recently found out that the schools might start charging for use. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's, excuse me, that's what I understand. If that is the case, then we are in dire need of more practice facilities. I can see expanded use of Sarah Park 4 with minor adjustments. Sarah Park 4 used to be the JV high school field, and I think we could get creative and make it a little more versatile. A plus to Sarah Park 4, it has lights. They're already there. Field 3, we could use that like on Saturday mornings with just some minor, probably no cost at all, but we just need to get a system with it. The fence at Sarah Park 1 was recently removed to make that field more versatile, but it's not viable for multi-team baseball use. On Saturday mornings, we could also use Sarah Park 3. With some of the parents having multiple children on multiple teams, to keep them traveling between Dick Samp and Sarah Park on Saturday mornings, if we could consolidate everything at Sarah Park, that would be terrific. Currently, we use the Sarah Park upper fields 5, 6, and 7 for our T-ball and A division. One of the issues with us doing that is with the A division games, these kids are 5, 6, and 7 and can hit farther, and the games are confined to that small area, so one team is batting, they're hitting it into the field of the others. So if we can move the upper division, which is A, down to, let's say, Sarah Park 4, then that would eliminate that problem. And by, I mean, configuring, let's just put some home plates, some base receivers in the current outfields with temporary backstops, temporary dugouts, possibility of some bleachers. then removed when the season is over if necessary. This would expand our practice fields also. This has been done at Rotary Park for girls softball. They put in some temporary home plates out there for their players. And that's worked out for them. I could meet with the maintenance supervisor out there, and we could look at what we really want to do. We at Little League, we have about 40 teams. There's Havasu girls softball, there's adult softball leagues, there's Havasu senior softball, and recently a veterans league has just started. So we have several teams that are vying for the use of all these fields in practice. So let's, if we can use what we have, you know, I know everybody wants big, nice ball fields and everything. That's great. But let's use what we have. Let's don't go out and build anything. Let's just be smarter. We can't keep pushing this down the road. It needs to be taken care of now. I know government works a little slow, but we have until January, February to get this part taken care of. We're not asking to build new fields, just utilize what we have with minor adjustments. Thank you for recognizing the problems, allowing us to bring them to you. Now, a separate little subject is I would like to see better enforcement of the smoking and drinking during the adult leagues, especially during Little League season. Alcohol and pot smoking when kids are playing their games or practicing and going down to the restrooms is not something I would like my kids to be exposed to. One other question I have is what kind of work is going to be done? I hear that they're going to possibly remove the grass infields on 2 and 4 and remove the mounds. Is that?
There has been some conversation on 4, not for field 2. There has been some conversation on 4 removing the grass infield and then removing that mound as well, and then a temporary or movable mound.
And I think that would be.
Again, for flexibility.
Yeah, for flexibility, I think that would be great. That's all I have to say. Any questions, comments?
Mr. Moore, I'm just curious as to whether you have talked to anyone at the school district?
No, I have not. I don't know who a contact would be. I was hoping that maybe Parks and Rec would have a liaison. If not, maybe it's something we need to work on, but we need to do it quickly.
Mr. Keene?
As far as the city goes, the city manager meets with the superintendent, I believe quarterly, and those conversations take place. But this is a perfect agenda item for maybe the school district at one of their district meetings.
So then should we contact the school district and request to get on the agenda, or is that something Parks and Rec or the board would do?
I would think it would be advantageous for the user groups to go to the school district and their board meeting and discuss the need to utilize their fields.
Go ahead. Mr. Chair, if I may, thank you. So this board here is directly responsible to provide guidance to the city council and only the city council. They have no say-so over what happens over at the school district. Here in the state of Arizona, the school district is its own separate entity. We are not subordinate to them. They're not subordinate to us. They're totally separate. So any of the fields and all of that gets utilized is strictly 100% up to the school. So if you want to discuss using fields for Little League and all that, that's something that you have to discuss directly with the school district. Do we meet constantly? Sure. Do we share things? Absolutely. But I would definitely suggest that maybe you do have a speak with them. Also with ASU and the restrooms, it is a campus that they don't allow people to wander around on the campus. They do allow us to use those fields when appropriate for practice, but there are restrooms to go down there. There have been some issues in the past with people going onto the ASU campus during school hours. And that's been a problem. We can't allow that to happen when we're allowing it to, they're allowing us to use those fields, and they're not charging us to use those fields. And then when it comes to using the fields out on the island for other purposes, and you've heard it a couple times already today, where the football field is, that is really an affluent pond. That's what it's developed for. That's its main purpose. But we don't always need to use it to get rid of our excess affluent water. In the meantime, when we're not using it for that, we allow Parks and Recs to use it for additional fields. But it's not a field that we're using to flood affluent water. It's an affluent water pond that we're allowing Parks and Recs to use for that. So that's going to continue until, as Director Keene said, we are working on another way to get rid of our excess affluent water. It's very important for us to have a means to do that. Once that happens, if we are successful in our endeavors right now, then those fields can become more of a permanent field where, as Director Keene said, we'd be able to do additional maintenance too.
And I'd like to see that island baseball field, softball field, maybe coordinate a little bit on when they dump their effluent, because that's a nice facility out there. You know, they got nice restrooms. I mean, a lot of money went into that. And that's just like the restrooms that are on these schools that the Parks and Recs, that's your restrooms. And we can't get access to them. They're locked up. So, and I understand, just like ASU, that they are concerned about somebody getting onto the school fields. Well, let's put a gate and lock that gate so you don't have access from those fields to the school. That's something that Little League could look into. If we have to provide the gates and the locks, we'll do it. You know, we'll go out and raise the money and get that done. But we've got fields sitting out there that are not being used, but yet everybody says, oh, we need to build more fields. Well, build more fields is going to cost you money. We've got these fields sitting out there not being used because the school district doesn't want us to use them. That's a waste, in my opinion. So, and any way we could get this, build a pond. I know we got a lake out there that's got 1 million miles of shoreline, but build a city pond, a city lake, put the affluent water in there, stock it with fish so kids can go out there and go fishing. I mean, it's let's be a little creative. So, anything else?
I'll just make a couple comments. Mr. Moore, you know, you're heavily involved in the youth of this community, and I can tell you right now, I personally appreciate it. I've worked with you on a lot of things. I think you could call your balls and strikes a little better, but that's okay. Other than that, I'd say you do a lot, and you know, you bring a lot of expertise to this community, which is amazing. You know, to echo some of the sentiments that were said, you know, take this passion to the school board. That's where it needs to start. They have a similar forum like we do. Gather the troops and take them to their call to the public and do the same thing you're doing here today. But again, it's twofold. I think it takes you guys and your groups to do that. And I also think that you bringing the sentiments to us to see the city potentially work with the school board a little better, I think will not go on deaf ears. You know, we have the city manager who has the quarterly meetings. You know, I think we get kind of the school board on both ends. You know, I think that'll be advantageous for us and for the user groups as well. Again, I love the ideas that you're coming up with. I mean, I hope maybe after this you get a chance to, you know, maybe have a chat with the director here and bring some of those ideas, meet with the new superintendent, Guy Reynolds. The guy's a rock star. He's got great experience as well. And funnel those into some good things, because again, I know that you have the right train of thought, and you're definitely, we want your information that you have, because it's great. So,
Okay. And I met with Guy, talked to him just kind of informally once or twice. I have a great relationship with Tim, with the guys at Sarah Park. And again, they're invaluable. So, and I'm sure we get out there and work something out, you know, to put some receivers out there and some home plates. We could get 3 additional fields out there in the outfield on 4 without a problem. I've been out there, measured it, looked at it. It would be great. It'd just be nice to get some temporary backstops out there. But those things we could talk about with Tim and Guy, and hopefully you've got that somewhere in storage and we could just use what we got. Not going to cost us anything. That's, I'm not out here asking for money. Let's use what we got.
And I think the director and his staff are very, interested in doing those things, especially with the extra money that we've got for the budget and with how diligent they are like he talked about, fixing some things in house and stuff like that. I think that's what they're looking to do. So, and I've been part of the pain and suffering of exactly what you talked about, not having enough fields. I've got 2 teams with 24 kids of baseball, or 24 baseball players that I don't have anywhere to practice. We're practicing in people's driveways because there's not enough places. So I think with your idea is to connect with him and Guy Reynolds to do that would be an easy solution to get us to the next season.
All right. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the public? Anybody else would like to address the board on this topic? All right, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Questions, comments, concerns? Ashley, go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just really appreciate what the audience member shared, and sounds like he took a lot of time kind of making some assessments and recommendations. And this comes up quite a bit with the school fields. And I think it's great if they're starting to talk about field use. And of course, they're going to need to establish fees to pay for the maintenance that goes along with that. But I do wonder if this is an opportunity at some point for a joint conversation just about, there's a lot that the school district shares with Parks and Recreation, the after school program and this discussion on field use. I just wonder if the school board might be interested, and if you all might be interested in some kind of opportunity just to meet and talk about these issues together. Does that sound like something that the rest of you on the board would be interested in?
So, me personally, I think I would love that opportunity. I don't know how that works with our end because of, the rules of order we're required to follow. But I don't know if there's something that we could have a joint meeting or.
Yeah, we'd have to look into exactly how the specifics could roll.
Sure.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
thank
sir.
you. So this board is formed and appointed by the city council and as an advisory board to the city council, not to the school district. So having you maybe try to get them to start their own board to see if there's a way to do that would be fine. As a board, if you want to recommend that Mr. Keene have those types of conversations with the school district, that's fine. But to actually meet as a board to try to get the school district to do something, I think would be inappropriate.
Great. Great advice.
I wonder, just to kind of piggyback on what Ashley was saying, if there's an opportunity to bring the students involved. So I know we have a student liaison position open, but I wonder if that's, instead of us going as adults to, the school board, if this is an opportunity for us to go back to the high school and say, look, you guys are involved in Little League, you guys are involved in after school sports. I'm a teacher here in the community and I can tell you the kids, have the same perception. They want to see change. And I wonder if maybe that's more of the avenue that we could take is forming like a kind of, or not forming, but reaching out to students and kind of helping them form an advisory committee, at which point they go to their own school board and say, how can we, utilize some of these spaces better? I know the gate idea sounds like a great idea. I would imagine that safety is a concern, but maybe the kids can come up with, they monitor how they do school dances, and how they kind of monitor who comes in and off campus. And, I wonder if that's maybe a better direction.
Since I started, I'll go ahead and finish it. Again, any student that wants to talk to the school board can do that. The student liaison position on this board is to ensure that the city council is hearing from the students' point of view on what they want from Parks and Recs. And so we have to make sure we stay within the scope of what this board actually was intended to do, which is advise the city council and not the school district. So as citizens of this city, you by all means can always go to the school district, talk to them about different things. But as a board, your job and the student liaison's job is just to advise and provide counsel to the city council on items that the city wants to see, or the people of the city want to see from the city council. As Mr. Moore brought forward, there's a lot of things that we can do as a board here to try to fix a few different things, maybe provide some direction. He's already working with Mr. Keen's staff, which I think is awesome. And we appreciate everything that everybody's doing, but we also have to make sure we keep on the focus of what this board actually is for, which is to provide info to the city council. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for the director? Ash, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Vice Mayor, for the clarification and your comments. I think just to maybe clarify, what I was saying is not to suggest that the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board would be advising the school district in any way or the school board. My suggestion was more about coming together as more of a collaborative discussion and learning from each other. And so that would inform the board on how to make a recommendation to city council. But, if the logistics can't be overcome, then I understand that. And I will say that the school board, they're elected representatives and I think are very open and willing to hear from constituents. And I encourage anyone who's listening to go to those school board meetings. I think they would be very open to a conversation about this. I guess my comment was just more about a collaborative approach, but perhaps that's something that city council can consider in the future, some kind of collaborative meeting with the school board. But thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? A couple questions for you, Director. So comments were kind of made for Mr. Moore that potentially the city owns the restrooms at the school district's fields. Is that true, or was there an agreement, or is there an agreement?
Yeah, there is an agreement in place. There's certain restrooms that we do maintain that are on the outsides of the schools. I'm not positive if we maintain all of them still, or if they're kind of spaced out.
So do you? And again, I know we're throwing this at you, and this may be for a better agenda item, but I mean, what was that agreement for when it came related to the sports field use? Like what?
We're going way back when an agreement is no longer in place to utilize those fields, but there was once, my understanding is an agreement in place that those fields were utilized. We do use the restrooms at one point for the after school program as well. So there's some different areas where those restrooms were utilized.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll have something later then for that. But I guess I do want to comment on a couple things as far as what your staff has done. I utilized the Dixant fields. I think it was a couple days after they completed the work on that one field, and I tell you, what a difference. We had two teams going, so one on each field, and your staff did an amazing job. I was blown away with the turnout of that one baseball field, and to think that they did that in-house was amazing. So that really shows something. I know they used quite a bit of loads of new red dirt on that field. Is that true?
Yes, and I don't have the number with me of exactly how many tons of red, but it was a lot.
Yeah. So a great job. I mean, like I said, it was funny because we were kind of fighting over who's going to use what field, and so yeah. Good. I'm glad to see that. And then, again, taking that fence out at Sarah Park, some of these little things that we talked about that Mr. Moore commented, the little things are what's going to help us utilize our current facilities, right? We all want this big, fancy, multi-million-dollar sports facility, but that's in the future potentially. Let's work on what we have now and make it more usable and user-friendly now. So great job to your staff for doing it, for sure. Any final comments, questions, sports fields, current needs? All right. We will move on to item 7.3, discussion AEDs in the park. Director Keen.
Yeah, so I don't have a whole lot of background on this item. It was requested and seconded during our August meeting by Board Member Ross. So if you'd turn that over to him and let him give a little bit of background of exactly what he was thinking there.
Sure. Go ahead, Mr. Ross.
Thank you. It was mainly just fact-finding as to whether the Parks Department I guess we could fold in the city as well with public safety, the fire department, as well as the police. Possibly we've got the school district involved as well, as to what our community position is as far as AEDs are concerned in terms of a public safety issue. I mean, when you need an AED, you want to be able to get to it, use it, and potentially save a life. We've had a number of incidences that have made national news in that regard. Young, well-trained, conditioned athletes that have sudden cardiac arrest. And an AED can make the difference between that life continuing or not. And I think in our community, and as I travel about in other communities, there's a lot of proactive activity taking place with AED placements, training, and education. And, along McCullough Boulevard, along our walking trails, at our baseball fields, I think that our director mentioned there was an AED device in the aquatic center, but that might be the limit to that. I don't know. So I was looking mainly for some fact finding on this and collecting some more information and maybe having some further discussion in this regard.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Director, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, that was kind of what I was looking for, is if we were talking about athletic fields or if we're looking at all our parks and trails for an idea here with the AEDs. I did have some conversation with the city manager as well as with our emergency services on this, and that's really where this item is going to fall, would be over to the emergency services. In those conversations, we do still have a few concerns. One is the temperature in Havasu. When you look at the AEDs themselves, they are the temperature range that the manufacturer gives is up to 120 degrees, which we all know we go over quite a bit, as well as the pads and the material that is used to adhere to the chest in those temperatures are certainly a concern. And then vandalism, depending on where they're placed, would certainly be a concern as well. And emergency services has those same concerns with those devices out. So I do think, as Board Member Ross stated, AEDs are a wonderful piece of equipment. They do help save lives while before the emergency personnel can arrive and administer their care and treatment. So definitely something that can be explored. And again, our emergency services departments will look into that and determine whether or not that's a viable avenue to go down around the city.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the board?
Yes. Would it be appropriate then to make possibly a motion at this point for the advisory board to recommend to our Vice Mayor David Lane that this be an agenda item for City Council?
This item is not on the agenda as an item that could be voted upon for tonight's meeting. It is just some discussion. Yes.
So this would be something that we would put on next month's agenda?
Again, I think the emergency services area is going to take up this item a little bit and work with it first before I think it would need to go to council.
Would it be appropriate then maybe to ask that the public safety, fire department, whomever come to our board, make a presentation in regards to their thoughts and ideas in this regard for public safety?
That could certainly be done.
That would be my recommendation. And thanks for the opportunity to hear me out on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Vice Mayor Lane?
Thank you. And Mr. Ross, thank you for bringing this forward and the idea. The thing that we need to remember when it comes to these automated external defibrillators and AED, that's a piece of medical equipment, not a piece of Parks and Recreation equipment. It falls under the purview of the fire department, emergency services. As Director Keene said, this is an emergency services piece of equipment. And the people that use these are trained to use them. That's why they're in facilities where there are trained personnel, such as the Aquatic Center. And I can tell you, our board chair, he is part of the Chiefs football team. They came to some nonprofits and were able to obtain an AED. And the personnel that now have that AED are trained in the use of that equipment. Having equipment out there without any trained personnel that are close by, and as Director Keene said, in the heat and vandalism and those kinds of things, this is something that it has been brought forward. You brought it to us. We have turned that over to the purview of the fire department, which is the emergency services, because it is medical equipment and not parks and recreation equipment. So it's really not something that needs to come forward any further. You brought it to our attention. The fire department will look at it, and they place AEDs where appropriate on city property. Thank you.
Great comments, Mr.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Ms. Butler?
Yeah, just a comment. I was looking at these online today, and they don't seem to be very expensive. And as far as the athletic fields are concerned, it would seem to me that it might even be something that coaches could acquire for their teams before 911 gets there. A coach has equipment for their teams that they bring with them. And like I say, it's just not a very expensive item, and coaches, I'm sure, could be trained to use them. It's just a comment.
Sure, and I'll kind of touch on that and a couple comments that Mr. Lane said as well. So I will tell you, I think it's a great idea, and I think it's something that the fire department should consider in certain areas that are heavily utilized with maybe a target population. But there's also a lot of things I think that need to be investigated with that as well. AEDs, although they're not super expensive to begin with, the maintenance can be expensive. The batteries, the replacement of the pads, things like that. The potential of the vandalism, the potential of just misuse, things like that. I think there's a lot to it to just put it out into a public space. I did speak briefly with the fire chief just in passing, and he is definitely aware of what these conversations are, and I think is truly looking into it, which was good to hear. So, and I tend to agree a little bit. I don't know that Parks and Recs should be directly responsible for this. I do agree that should probably be on the public safety side to be able to make the decision if they think it needs to apply or not. But what I would say and what I would encourage is kind of an example of what we did with the Chiefs football program. We saw the need for it. We realized that there should be some specialized training and that we can't just maybe put it on the outside of a snack bar. So we approached some local nonprofit groups. We acquired the funding to purchase one. The unit was purchased. We sent all of our board members and coaches through the appropriate training on how to utilize it. And we keep it with us everywhere we go. And that includes all the practices throughout the week here locally, our home games locally, and then also our away games that we go to. We traveled to Kingman this last weekend, and we brought our med bag with the AED attached to it with trained members of our staff on that were able to use it in the event that we needed to. So, it would be nice to see some of these organizations, Havasu Little League, senior softball programs, thing like that, step up, maybe take that ownership of that device. So maybe all the onus doesn't fall on the city. Again, I think that we're kind of graying the lines of how much the city needs to get involved, but I do think it's good conversation to have.
Just another comment, and that was my point in bringing that to the board's attention, is just to increase the awareness. I belong to a local Havasu Four Wheelers Club, which we've had the training. We go out, quite some distances sometime, and we always make sure that one person in the group that's traveling has the AED and is trained in that regard. It can save a life. And that would be true for the baseball, swimming, and other activities that we have in the park. Not to think that it's the park's responsibility, but maybe communication, education, opportunity to access facilities in that regard can make a difference. And so that was my point in bringing this topic to discussion, and I appreciate the discussion. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I agree, Mr. Ross. I know that, again, when I became part of the Chiefs organization, an AED wasn't on the forefront of the thoughts of what to purchase as an organization, right? There was other things, footballs, uniforms, things like that were, I guess, more on the priority list. But again, when it came down to it, conversations came about and it became a priority. So, and again, I think that'll open the eyes up of some of the individuals today. So, any other comments before I open it up to the public? Okay. This is a public hearing. Would anybody like to address the board in reference to this agenda item?
Doug Carr. I don't know if you've known Adam's Heart Foundation out of Las Vegas. You know, it was started over 6 years ago. Adam was a high school soccer player on a club team, and he had a heart attack. And luckily, there was an ER doctor and nurse walking by to one of their kids' game and helped. And it took about 10, 15 minutes before the ambulance could get there. And so since that time, Adam's Heart Foundation has put over 40 of these items in the sports complexes around Las Vegas and even Ohio. But and then their mission is increase the ability of AEDs at all sporting fields, encourage youth organization coaches to become CPR and AED trained. And so they are outside in these fields, all summer long. So Las Vegas is, almost as hot as Lake Havasu, but maybe not so much. But anyway, they have over 40 of them in their complexes, baseball fields, and there's even some at pickleball now in Las Vegas. And then the Pickleball Association even tried to, I think we talked to the Parks and Rec a couple years about them, about getting an AED there, but, we didn't follow through very much. And it would be nice to be up there, even with an old person, not just a young person that has a quick heart attack. And actually, I was just watching the news, national, and it had a thing on Adam's Heart. Some track star or something, some high school back east, and it had an AED. And then they talked about Adam's Heart. But if I go on there and check out Adam's Heart and .org and find out more about them.
Thank you. A question: does the Pickleball Association have one of these?
No,
have an
we
AED?
do not. No.
Does Adam's Heart, is that like a grant opportunity to where they provide?
Yeah,
grants?
it's a foundation.
Okay.
So, and then there would be a lot of, information there too. I don't know, like you said, they're not outrageous, but.
Would that be something that the Pickleball organization would be
I
interested in?
believe we could,
Okay.
yeah. It's just finding out a place to put it. And then, you need to be trained on how to use these things too.
Sure.
So, but,
Let me comment that the training is very simple. Less than an hour, you get your AED card and you're good to go.
right. And no one's needed one yet. But,
That's good. Yeah. Again,
Okay.
great pieces of equipment to have. And again, I think, I appreciate you bringing that information in reference to adamsheart.org. I think that's a good resource. And again, I think you're the prime example, and your association is a prime example of a good candidate that could purchase one and take responsibility and ownership of it and maintain it themselves, make sure they bring it to all their different events and association meetings and things like that. I think that, in my opinion, I think that's the route that needs to happen. at each
I think,
organization.
something where it needs to be there. And someone needs to break the glass and an alarm goes off if, they try to take it or something. But, someone's not going to just pack it there every day, or I don't know. I guess if we had a shed or a job box there at the park, then Dick's Hamp would, we'd have it there. But
Yeah, sure. And I agree with you. I think that there's, the potential that a permanent fixture could be there, but I think that takes a lot more than
right,
just buying
yeah,
it.
maybe just a little shade structure over it or something, or
Right.
a light over the top so it shines you know where it's at night. So, okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the public that would like to address the board on this topic? All right. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing, bring it back to the board. Any other final comments in reference to this?
I just have a quick question. Director Keene, how does the city coordinate with the fire department? Like when there's events going on, like is it just a certain number of people in attendance that they have emergency service? I'm just curious, like what the process is for having.
Yeah, as part of our event application process, all the different departments see that application and get to comment on it and are aware that they're going on. Certain events, depending on the size or the activity taking place, fire department or the police department will actually stage people there or make the recommendation that AMR is on site.
Thank you.
Sure. And again, I think to kind of answer your question as well, is I think that also comes down to each event and their promoter to take the initiative to do that, right? Again, part of the Chiefs program, we contract with AMR and Havasu Fire to have an ambulance on site during our games in case there's an injury. And again, I think that isn't always the priority of a promoter. If you're having an event, the priority isn't always public safety, where in my opinion, I think it should be. And again, I think it needs to fall back onto the promoter a little bit as well to make those arrangements.
And I think it's good that there's that much I didn't realize that there was that much collaboration between this, so that's nice to hear.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Move on to future discussion items. Would any member of the board like to add an item for future discussion? I guess if we could add it, or if you're interested in adding it, go ahead. Ashley, go ahead first.
Oh, I'll wait. You can finish your thought.
No. Go ahead. You had your hand up first, I think.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just going back to the conversation about the fields and the grant that Mr. Keene shared about, I wondered if the board would want to have more information, perhaps more of a discussion about learning about the process that the city uses to seek out and apply for grants. I know when we had large groups of folks making calls to the public during our meetings around this topic, there were many, many suggestions about grant opportunities. So I just wondered if that might be a discussion item on its own about learning about the grant process.
Sure. Director, is that something feasible? I know obviously we have our new grant coordinator for the city. Is that something feasible you think that would be possible?
If that is the board's desire, yes, that's something we could.
Okay. All right. With that being said, do I have a second for that?
This is Mercedes. I'll second.
Okay. All righty. Any other future discussion items? No other hands are raised before I comment on mine? Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just one more thing. I know we talked about the second pool, swimming pool, and where do we stand on that?
Vice Mayor Lane, you summed this up very well last meeting. Really where that stands now is there's conversations happening with the school district, but also internally. It's something we're preparing to put together as a CIP project that would go into our budget process and kind of see where it falls out in the CIP rankings.
Thank you.
And for those that may not know in the public, CIP is our capital improvement program. Sorry.
Okay. Just with the comments that got brought forth from the sports fields topic, I guess I don't know how we could word this, but essentially looking for maybe some kind of topic in reference to discussion and possible action to about school district partnerships and conversations, something to that extent, to where maybe we could discuss that a little further in depth and maybe give a little guidance or recommendation, I guess I'd better put it to yourself and or city staff to maybe open up that conversation on the city's end about that.
Yeah, I'll have to think on that one a little bit, but
I'll take it.
we can see what we can make a wording for that.
Okay. Do I have a second on that?
Mr. Chair, I'll second that motion.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Any other future discussion items?
Ashley had mentioned earlier the process on naming the park. Did you want to get a second on that and put that on?
On the which one?
The Downtown Catalyst. Coming up with a process.
Oh, okay. Yeah, good call. Sure. And again, maybe I'll defer to Vice Mayor Lane on this since this was his idea. I don't know, as far as naming for the Catalyst project, I don't know how you want that, or if it's time for that, or.
It's not really my idea. It's just something that I threw out there for you guys. I'm just here to listen to what you all have to say and provide a little bit of guidance. But eventually, there's going to have to come up with a name for whatever. I mean, we call it the Downtown Catalyst Project now. People call it the grassy area on McCulloch. You name it, there's a name for it. So what my suggestion to you all was maybe come up with a process as a board to give recommendation to the city on how you would like to go about getting it named, whether it's going to be a public contest or if you have any types of ideas like that. Just some thoughts, not on coming up with the name, but some thoughts on how the city should go about naming that piece of property once it gets done. And whenever you want to have the conversation, that would be great.
Well put. Ashley, did you want to take a stab at that?
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for the reminder, Sherry. Yes, for a future agenda item, can we have a topic just to open up a discussion and come up with some possible ideas of how to engage the community in naming the park?
All right. Do we have a second?
I will second.
All righty. All right. Anything else? Can I have a full meeting? All right. We will move on to future meetings.
Future meeting dates, October 23rd and November 27th.
All righty. Thank you. All right. Any final comments or questions for the good of the order? 27th. All righty. With nothing else being seen, have a good night, everybody. Thank you for coming.